up, the Green Deal, the renovation wave, what's going to be happening in the area of mobility and transport, digital transition of cities, and so on and so forth. We also underlined the importance of cities in order to kickstart this process or to support this process. And quite obviously, we are not only talking about the big cities, those ones who anyway sort of, can afford going about smart city plans. So that's actually where the EIP-SCC Marketplace kicks in with help to find financing. So we are essentially speaking about smaller, medium-sized cities who need financing or help with financing, finding the right means to actually implement, finance, and deploy their plans. And that's where the matchmaking facility of the marketplace, our investor network, kicks in with help. And actually, with no further ado, I would give back to Eelco, and I wish you a very interesting, successful session with lots of insight. I will stay in the background, so should there be any question directly for the Commission or for myself, I will be pulled back in by Eelco, I guess, and will answer your questions. Thank you for now, and enjoy. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Georg, for that introduction. So indeed, my name is Eelco Kruizinga, and actually I am one of the two matchmaking specialists of the EIP-SCC, or rather the European Smart Cities Marketplace. And it is our role to match those people who have a promising project concept with any of our growing number of members of our investor network. To explain you a little bit of what we're doing, I've prepared a small presentation which should set the scene also for this session. Our presentation will end by introducing the panelists for today. Well, just some housekeeping rules, and probably you're familiar if you've been through the process during the day. You're all muted by default to minimize background noise, and we will have the opportunity for you to ask questions after the last panelist has provided his introduction. You can ask the questions using the facilities of this platform, and should there be more questions that we can handle in the interest of time, we will get back to you via email post-session. Do note that this session is being recorded, so for later viewing as well. Now, the European Innovation Partnerships on Smart Cities and Communities is really, let's call it a platform for bringing people together of various stakeholder groups in order to create let's say a market for smart city projects and technologies. And the way we are trying to address that is to have this mantra of explore, shape, deal. So what we're doing is we're bringing together good examples, good best practice or good practice examples of smart city projects and solutions, aim to present them in a meaningful and inspectable way on a web platform, so that you can explore what is out there, what is being tried and what is being successful. And we also have a database of solutions and a database also of key performance indicators around those solutions. So that's the explore part. And actually, the Explore is being addressed in a mini way during this conference as well, but we are doing this continuously over the years. The second part is the shape part, which is really bringing together experts, stakeholders to work on, let's call it hot topics in smart city land. So the terminology that goes with that is we have so-called action clusters, which are 6 action clusters. And each of those action clusters has any number of initiatives that they're promoting to address either barriers or promising solutions in the smart city world. So we have initiatives around, for instance, the use of data from satellites to enable smart city solutions. There's also initiatives around smart lampposts and such. I would invite you to go also to the web platform to see what these action clusters and initiatives are about, and also how you might join those action clusters and initiatives to provide your contribution. And then thirdly, and I think that's the main focus of this session, is what we are calling the deal part. So for those who have a very good project concept, to make them meet investors. So not subsidies, but really private investors as well. So that's the part we're trying to address in this session as well. So what is that? What is that really about? What is it that we're really doing around the deal part? So in summary, our instruments are sort of divided up in 3 areas. So we have instruments around enabling you, all of you out there, to explore smart city solutions. So we have a database with both quantitative and qualitative information. And we do sit on a database of contacts that you might engage with to learn more about those solutions. And then we have the shape part, which is really around these action clusters and initiatives. And then there's the deal part. So that consists of a number of, to date it's actually 15 organizations, 15 investors, investor organizations. We have a process, and actually in this meeting we have my colleagues who are also reviewing proposals against a model that we're using, against the project maturity level model, and trying to match those with the requirements of our investor network. But also we do help you with a number of other interventions. So for instance, we have webinars, and we're also planning a masterclass for project developers. So explore, shape, deal, and we're now covering the last part of the set of interventions, the deal part. Now, if I'm talking about project maturity levels, it's not very spectacular. It's a quite simple framework of 6 levels, quite resembling the technology maturity levels, but this is PML, project maturity levels. So the lowest level is level 1, where you have a potential project identified, and then the highest level, PML 6, is where investment offer is completely detailed and spec'd out, and anything in between. And so what we're doing is when you are submitting a project proposal to us, we are assessing where you are, and also we are trying to find out how we could help you to advance to a level that it is investment ready. So PML level 5, 4.5, 5, or 6, so that they can actually be submitted to an investor. Now, our investor network, as I said, consists of 15 members now. It's a growing network. It's definitely not a closed network. So any investor who may want to join, just reach out to us. But all of those investors have in common that they're interested in receiving your investment proposal. They have various financial instruments. So some of them provide equity, others loans, forfeiting as a solution. And the investment range is also quite wide. So you have very small types of investments to actually quite large infrastructure type investments. And they're using all kinds of instruments that they want to engage, that they could engage with you with. So for instance, joint ventures, public-private partnerships, and such. So we are growing that number of investors. Actually, in our panel today, we have 2 members of our network presenting to you. As I already alluded to, we have a number of instruments to enable you to get to the highest project maturity level as feasible. So we are now planning a masterclass for smart city project developers, a very practical 2-day format, 1 day of exercises, and then a period of homework, and then you can present your concept notes at the 2nd day to a panel of knowledgeable people, including members of our investor network. So I do invite you to look out for the communication around this masterclass and join that masterclass if you believe you have a very good project concept that you may wish to advance as well. Then also we have a number of webinars, 3 in the past already this year. There was one on due diligence. What is that actually, due diligence? What are investors looking for? We had a webinar on risk assessment, a particularly important element, also for investors to understand the risk profile of the investment. And we had a webinar around delivery models of funding and procurement. And then those webinars are actually recorded. You can replay them from the website. And we're also planning a number of webinars for later this year. one around demand aggregation, a very important topic, because many of the investors think that some of the projects are a bit small for them. So grouping projects into packages and bundling is an important one. The ESCO model. Many of our investors are interested in investing in ESCO, so an understanding of what that actually is might be relevant for project developers as well. And then smart mobility services and issues related to that. Those are indicative topics. We're still exploring whether there's a real appetite for those three. So we'd be curious to learn from the audience if you really feel that these are interesting topics to you as well. Now, I was also saying that we are having a website. That's not entirely true, because we have two websites at the moment which are currently being merged. Actually, on another screen that you don't see, I can see that website under development. We have a sneak preview ready tomorrow. It's a website completely in the styling of the European Commission, which basically brings together the Smart Cities Information System, one platform, and the current Marketplace website into one. So it merges the database I was alluding to, the Explorer database, with the shape and deal parts, which are represented as functionality in the current Marketplace website. So this is a sneak preview, and with a bit of fair wind, we can present that tomorrow in this conference. Now, the call for project concept notes, that's really important for our matchmaking activities. I do invite you to have a look at that call for project concept notes and to see what we're really asking. We have to date quite a number of those being submitted to us. Since January, we already had 60 project concept notes being submitted to us across a variety of sectors, quite evenly spread, asking for quite a few million euros of investment. But if you then start to look at what we are actually, through our funnel, actually being able to match with our investors, that's a fraction of it. It's not surprising, because many of the projects that we are getting in our funnel have quite a low level of maturity and need some work actually to be proposed to investors. And it's actually that work that we want to do with you as a matchmaking team. Now, hopefully this is enough information for you to understand the bigger picture of the deal part of the marketplace, so the Explorer, Shape, and Deal part of the marketplace. There are various ways of getting in touch with us or staying in touch with us. They are here on the slide, but I'm sure that the organizers of this conference are able to provide you with more direct information that you can really use straight away. Now I want to go over to introducing our panelists for this afternoon. We actually have three panelists. First of all, we have Shirene Madani, who is with Arcus Infrastructure Partners, and she will be speaking around their smart city investment strategy, rather in and post the times of COVID, and what they as an investor are looking for from you. Because sometimes they seem like two different worlds, project developers and investors, maybe not speaking the same language. So it will be really interesting to learn from Shirene what they are looking for from their part. And then our second panelist is Eduard Puig MacLean, who sits with G&E Finance. I think he's actually located now in Spain, as far as I can tell, and he's going to speak around smart city investments, the road ahead. And then I'm quite pleased to announce that we also have somebody from the EIB, a senior urban specialist, Kamil Dörfler, who is with us from Luxembourg. And the spin on that Kamil is able to offer is that what the EIB has in terms of insights of smart city investments, particularly in the CE, the Central and Eastern European region, because we do have to bear in mind that I'm not in Brno, but there are actually people in Brno right now who are interested in understanding what kind of opportunities there are in their region to seek investments in smart cities. So I want to hand over to Shirene first. So what I'll do right now is to switch the slides and pass the controls over to Shirene. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the My name is Shirene. I work for Arcus. Arcus is a fully independent infrastructure fund targeting European mid-market value-add opportunities across the telecom, transport, and energy sectors. We're a diverse team consisting of 28 investment professionals, 12 spoken languages amongst the team, and 5 offices across Europe. We're a mid-market investor seeking controlling stakes with an equity investment sweet spot of about 100 to 250 million euros per investment. The source of our funds is primarily occupational pension schemes from both public and private investors. Therefore, we are not massive risk seekers, but at the same time, we are interested in opportunities beyond core infrastructure to achieve mid-teen level returns. We invest for the long term. So our second fund, EIF-2, has a minimum 12-year duration. This means that we're dedicating significant time and resources to growing and enhancing the platforms that we invest in. We're currently wrapping up our first fund, EIF-1, which by today's standards would have been defined as core infrastructure, but was ahead of its time at the point of investment. EIF-2 has stretched the definition of infrastructure. So Arcus is often the first investor into transitional assets that are not yet defined as core, such as towers and rolling stock in the case of our first fund, or cold storage logistics in the case of our second fund. Remaining always focused on the real asset underpinning and stable long-term cash flow generation. Coupled with our hands-on approach, Smart City investment is a natural space for us, which fits squarely within our investment strategy. So a bit about our investment approach. We aim to deliver attractive risk-adjusted returns and yield to our investors over the long term through rigorous investment selection, high-quality comprehensive due diligence, strong deal execution, and structured asset management. The size of the investment is highly dependent on the opportunity itself. Most of the investments that we've seen to date have been invested through a platform and envisage some sort of roll-up or expansion strategy to get to the target 100 to 250 million euros that I alluded to. In order to add value, we take controlling interest or positions with significant influence over the key strategic, operational, and financial decisions. At the moment, we have 8 assets under our belt, 4 of which are in managed accounts, and 4 of which are in our second fund. Fiber to the home, or FTTH, is a key strategy for our second fund, demonstrated by our 2 businesses, eFiber and Swissfernet, in the Netherlands and Switzerland, and through our FTTH strategy from our managed account, TDF, in France. The majority of European homes still rely on copper or coaxial local area networks and have since been retrofitted to carry higher speed data across. However, that infrastructure has reached its limits. Fiber is a relatively future-proof technology. So there are lots of additional use cases, including 5G and smart city overlay that can be added over top. We are seeing nascent demand for certain adjacent services over our FTTH networks, such as metering, video surveillance, and are ensuring that our networks are built from the outset to be able to meet smart city use case demands. So, for example, in Switzerland and France, we are already providing mobile backhauling through our networks, as well as video surveillance through TDF's FTTH networks. Our third asset in the fund, Horizon, is a smart meter business in the UK, and that also has smart city characteristics. Smart meters are a central pillar in the coordinated transition to a lower carbon, more stable, balanced energy system by providing real-time energy usage data to the end user. Constellation, our fourth asset, is the cold storage business in Norway, the Netherlands, and Belgium. So why are we targeting smart city investment? Arcus's investment strategy incorporates a deep understanding of the European infrastructure landscape and assessment of broader trends affecting key sectors in forthcoming years. 3 underlying trends are shaping our investment strategy, being decarbonization, changing demographics such as urbanization or an aging population, and data explosion. These same 3 trends are massively shaping cities. Smart city infrastructure is ideal for an infrastructure investor such as Arcus, as it fits well within our investment strategy, sitting at the crossroads between our three key areas of focus, being telecom, transport, and energy. Cities have identified areas such as public safety, smart mobility and transportation, sustainability, as well as citywide connectivity as a priority. To date, legacy urban infrastructure is becoming stretched, leading to strong interest in privately financed investments in smart city initiatives. Through state-of-the-art infrastructure, as well as long-standing smart city expertise, we aim to unlock societal benefits by offering services that facilitate a rapid transition towards safer, lower carbon, resource-efficient, and better connected economies. So I'll briefly walk you through the structure that I have here on slide 4. This is our proposed investment structure. Arcus in this structure would be the capital funding the project SPV. So the project SPV would be financing and doing the project governance of the smart city project, or the OpCo. And in exchange would receive dividends, which would be funded either through some kind of subscription model or cost savings, so on and so forth. The city, in this case, is responsible for defining their goals and setting the objectives of the project. And in return, the OpCo will provide creative solutions, will offer different concepts in order to meet these objectives. As you can see from the model, there is no cost involved for the city. There is no additional workload beyond setting these goals and objectives. And there are tons of political and economic benefits to be gained. At the same time, we're very receptive to a potential equity stake investment on behalf of the city if they wish to do so. And last but not least are the advisors and the goods and service providers that are essential to delivering the solution. So there's great potential to leverage smart city network infrastructure for multiple different use cases. As I alluded to, fiber networks is a good example, but at the same time, city street furniture and building access are likely to be crucial enablers. To make it more investable, we need to combine infrastructure ownership with other key services to be able to generate returns, such as through savings, usage fees, subscription models, advertising, or leasing space out to third parties. From our experience, many projects assessed to date do not have an appealing risk-reward balance. So our message to city representatives is to use your buying power as a catalyst for the positive change that you would like to see within your city. This means that you need to be more prepared prior to launching an RFP and discussing with investors so that you're aware of the various efficiencies that can be gained through investment in new technology. Part of the reason why private capital has not played a big role in smart city rollout to date is due to the high implementation risk that is expected to be taken on by the investor. If necessary, local authorities should be willing to provide investors a reasonable level of return by making availability payments in exchange for investment in the enabling technology, all the while knowing that cost savings are being achieved, if not directly as a result of the investment, then through other efficiencies. It's important to keep in mind the gain-sharing potential for both the city and the investor after successful implementation. So at the moment, Arcus has a strategic partnership with T-Systems and Arthur D. Little, following the same proposed investment structure on slide 4, to fast-track the rollout of smart city services and infrastructure across European cities. Many of the initiatives that we're targeting are highly compatible with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We are offering cities an end-to-end solution from concept development to full-scale deployment, including the provision of financing, technology, and operations of the Smart City project once in place. Our proposed long-term model combines the strengths of the private and public sectors to deploy innovative digital services and infrastructure with a people-centric approach at its core. At the same time, we're also in discussions with a large energy service company. We're following a similar model as the proposed investment structure, whereby Arcus will be providing the capital required and the ESCO will be carrying out the day-to-day activities. So a bit about the current market, COVID-19 has highlighted the importance of digital infrastructure in sustaining economic activity, as I'm sure many, if not all of you, have been working from home or accessing essential services through digital infrastructure. At the same time, it's pointed out gaps in society where broadband connection just isn't good enough, and that is thus deepening the digital divide. Decision makers are now focused on stimulating recoveries to get economies up and running again. So it's more obvious than ever that smart cities should be at the heart of policy response to tackle issues that are presented by trends such as rapid urbanization. I also want to briefly touch upon the role of big data. So data privacy is a big concern for communities, but if governed properly, it can be largely in the public's interest, leading to other services if accessible to researchers and community members in real time. As an infrastructure investor, we don't see the need to retain ownership of big data. Rather, we are looking for investment in infrastructure. And big data is simply a byproduct of the smart city infrastructure network. Today's urban data is scattered across several owners, making it very difficult for community use. Big data is also still in poor condition and just not in the right state to be taken advantage of by computers and algorithms. However, big data has lots of positive impacts for society. For example, the ability to reduce congestion, minimize energy usage, provide early warning systems, including for infectious disease surveillance, and optimize essential services. And it's also important to assess the value of real-time data, which can greatly improve public services. So, for example, transport authorities can use sensors and real-time footage from public transport vehicles to service and maintain their network and fleet, thereby reducing breakdowns, unscheduled outages, optimizing vehicle availability, and maximizing intervals between repairs. At the same time, this information can be greatly beneficial for maintaining public safety, such as crowd control after a big football match, as well as predictive maintenance of other city infrastructure. Over the last few years, we've seen different opportunities, such as smart lighting projects all across Europe, from small to large scale, EV charging, and smart parking solutions. We've identified 3 pillar projects that we view as good building blocks, as they demonstrate economic characteristics that would unlock private funding on a standalone basis. So, for example, building automation, whereby through the use of sensors, you can achieve energy gains by having greater control over your HVAC system. Or smart parking management, which again, through the use of sensors, is able to reduce traffic by more efficiently allocating parking spots. And finally, smart street lighting, which I'm sure you're probably most familiar with, whereby we aim to achieve energy efficiency gains, but at the same time, we can pair other technologies onto the lampposts, such as small cells, in order to achieve 5G densification goals. So we can go further to include other supplementary use cases, such as smart tolling systems, mobility solutions, and refuse collection, on top of these anchor projects to provide a more comprehensive smart city solution. To summarize, technology-enabled infrastructure relies on a partnership between public decision makers and private investors that have the capital to deploy and expertise in project management and delivery. The technology is definitely there, but it can be adapted to meet your needs, which requires you as the city to have a defined set of goals and objectives.
Thank you, Shirene. So that was really interesting. I want to hand over now to Eduard Puig MacLean. You don't have any slides, so what I'll do is to stop sharing this one, and you'll just be on the video then.
Very good. Can you hear me, Eelco?
Yes.
Excellent. So thank you, everyone. My name is Eduard. I'm in charge of operations at Genie Finance. Genie Finance is an investment company which is very much focused on, or pretty much focused on, the energy retrofitting of buildings or of the built environment. And we basically develop and structure financial instruments and financing programs to channel funding toward homeowners or asset owners willing to retrofit their home or their building. So my contribution today will be very much from this perspective. Shirene was talking more from the city infrastructure and network. So my contribution today will be more from a building stock perspective, and particularly from the retrofitting, energy retrofitting point of view. I was asked to talk about the road ahead and our experience with receiving project proposals and how to increase the rate of success. So given this overarching theme, and given that the audience most likely is a combination of cities and project developers, then I will very much focus on two key elements for when we receive proposals and when we decide or not to go forward with an investment proposal, and are the following two. The first one, and this goes to the cities, actually is a provoking statement, and that's the following. Cities actually have to have skin in the game and leave behind the model of subsidies only. And for the project developers, the key element, the key issue to really be focusing on and build the business case is the revenue model. And when I say revenue model, I don't just mean the payments that will come as the return for the investor. It goes much deeper. Actually, it means making sure that project, that proposal will be able to trigger demand at market level. It means that it will have a value proposition, added value to the user, be it a homeowner, be it an asset owner, that in the end will decide to adhere to that investment, to take the risk, to take on board that project and fulfill his or her obligations to complete the project, and therefore also to comply with the payments that's scheduled in the future. And this component is of essence because not having this clear or clarity on where the revenues will come from, but even more importantly, where the value will be added to the end user who will be in the end willing to pay, the case will be actually very weak. Now, combining these two elements, it also appears, let me say, perhaps another component, which is what role cities can play when we talk about this very important revenue model, business model, and so on, which is we could put it the following way. In case of delinquency, in case of the asset owner or the homeowner, happens something when it comes to the scheduled payment and there's no payment executed, what role the cities can play given their tools, given their administrative processes that can also help the project developer or the project promoter to make sure that the risk that in the end the investor is taking is minimized somehow. So I'm going to develop on what I just said, on these 2.5 elements, and I'm going to try to give you a couple of examples based on existing projects, existing programs, existing financial instruments that so far are proving successful. But I also want to do this taking into account, since the contribution needs to be on the road ahead, I want to bring this into context of what's coming next or what's happening. And you all very well know the green recovery, the recovery funds, the Green Deal. All these elements are basically putting us in a moment where this kind of proposals are very much needed. And it's the right time, and it's the right moment, and it's the right scheme to actually promote this sort of investment proposals. Why am I saying this? Because the Green Deal, the recovery funds, even some of the H2020 or the European Commission grants programs very much promote the public-private partnership model. Why is that? Because basically for the energy transition, for the recovery funds to be able to arrive to the projects, there's no enough public funding, there's not enough public subsidies to really support what's coming ahead. If we really want to match our climate goals we need to really mobilize, as it's been said in the sessions before, we really need to mobilize private investment. And we only can make this happen should we be able to bring some level of comfort, some level of secureness to investors who are really providing the capital. That's why this concept of public-private is so relevant today. And that's why I was saying at the beginning, this provoking statement of skinning the games from the cities, and I will explain what I mean by that. But at the same time, a clear revenue model, a clear value added to homeowners, to asset owners, who in the end are the ultimate decision maker to decide to join one of these investment proposals, right? Okay, so let me give you an example of how this private-public partnership is working today. And these are the kind of investment proposals that we're looking at and that we have funded already, actually in a very similar way, in a very similar structure than Shirene was explaining before. So I'm not going to enter into these details because you already saw the presentation before. But what I want to focus on is the role that the public and the private, meaning the city and the project developer, can play to make sure that they have a higher chances of getting private funding being funneled into this proposal. So in the case of the ESCO, in the end, the public authority knows better than anyone what are the local needs, what are the city requirements, but also at the same time, what are the city challenges, the socioeconomic reality that the project developer and the program, or whatever the project is about, needs to tackle. So the city needs to provide this sort of leadership in defining what are the key elements or the key challenges, the key needs that need to be addressed. At the same time, as the city is a stakeholder that still today, at least in many geographies, can still have trust from the market, from the homeowners, from the asset owners. So therefore, there's a level of trust that needs to be leveraged out there, because that's how the city can actually convince and mobilize the need or help trigger some of the demand from the market. But actually, above all, what actually the local authority, the municipality can do in this partnership is to, by all means, from an investment perspective, we're always talking from an investment point of view, is to really minimize the cost of the finance and reduce uncertainty. Why? Because public authorities have the process, have the administrative support, and have the legal authority to take certain steps to make sure that the funding and the payments are channeled through what we call secured mechanism. And the ESCO is one of them, right? So cities play a significant role in reducing the cost of financing by providing all these elements. But then at the same time, I was saying before, the role of the private party, of the market player, is to really focus on where is the money come from and how can we do to make sure that we can stimulate the demand together with the public authority, but above all, to provide certain value to customers, to users, to asset owners, to make sure they decide to implement a retrofitting project that we know it's cumbersome, it takes some long time, and sometimes even is inconvenient, because when you have your home, your office, your building, your asset refurbished, well, it's a period in which generates a lot of comfort. So those programs that really promote and provide that technical assistance, something that's been commented also in previous sessions, that technical assistance actually needs to make sure that all those obstacles throughout the project that the developer will promote needs to be minimized. And that's how we can combine public and private, and at the same time minimize uncertainty, reduce the risk, provide eventually some administrative and bureaucratic tools for decreasing the payment default or the payment delinquency. Because in the coming months, in the coming few years, given the economic recession, that's something that for sure will be on the table, and that most likely is going to increase the risk assessment, the credit scores of the project takers. So we need to make sure that we put on the table existing mechanisms to reduce such risk. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to make any project proposal, investment proposal that project developers or even cities put on the table for investors to really take on. So, let me just close my short intervention with food for thought, and so with a closing remark. We need to transition from a subsidy model towards an economic feasible sort of program, in which could be mostly run by private players, the project developers, but in which the public authorities can actually play a crucial role. They can provide equity, they can provide some secure mechanisms to decrease the payment delinquency. And at the same time, we've seen cities setting up, based on the smart finance for smart buildings, setting up what we call de-risking mechanisms, which are basically tools that allow to use in a much more effective way the limited public resources to set up, for instance, social guarantee funds that allows us, investors, to attract even more funding and even to provide loans to vulnerable families. So should there be this kind of commitment for public authorities to provide these limited resources in smarter ways, and at the same time being actively involved in how to design and run these programs, we will see more private funding getting channeled into smart city projects. And so with that sort of provoking statement, that I hope it will trigger some questions and some remarks for the Q&A session, I will pause here and give the word back to Eelco. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eduard. That was really interesting. Indeed thought-provoking about, let's say, a new role for city governments in the post-COVID recovery area. So moving from a subsidy world to, let's say, a de-risking partner for private investors, having this, let's call it a social net. That's the mental picture I get in my head, is to offer a social net for those who would suffer from default payments. The next speaker is Kamil Dörfler from the EIB, who has probably a slightly different perspective to put into this session, maybe a more of a macroeconomic perspective on the region in the context of smart city investment. I think Kamil will be referring back to some earlier work that the EIB has performed for the region on economic analysis, and probably he will be able to highlight the main findings out of those, and maybe you can also provide an update on those findings. So what I'll do is to share the presentation of Kamil, and then I'll mute myself again. So I've shared the presentation, Kamil. You can operate it yourself as you may know. Yeah.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to be invited to Brno. I'm currently speaking from Luxembourg, but I'm of the Czech nationality. And actually, I appreciate any opportunity to take on a shirt and a tie these days. I'm working for the project directorate of the European Investment Bank. We are an EU institution. We are a financing arm of the EU. We provide financing to SMEs, but also to large and smaller infrastructure projects of the national, regional, as well as local stakeholders, understanding municipalities. We lend out about 75 billion euro yearly, of which about 1/3 goes to urban areas. We assist the cities with the implementation of innovative solutions in urban development, and we promote application of the smart city approach in practice. I try to press down. Okay, it's going to be arrow down. My contribution today comprises 3 parts: review of key findings of an EIB economic study concerning smart city investments. Secondly, how the EIB understands smart city investments. And finally, what are the EIB tools for financing smart city investments? Upon request from the organizers, I would like to present you with some findings of an EIB economic study, which was based on an EIB investment survey. Every year, the EIB carries out an investment survey among companies in the EU. In 2017, the survey was special because it was extended also to municipalities. And I think it was very, very timely. The survey was dedicated to smart city investments, and the economic study following that was particularly focused on the region of Central, Eastern, and Southeastern Europe. This is the abbreviation SESEE, and I may further refer to this region just to Central Europe. The study is based on a concept of a smart region index, which was developed by the EIB. It's a tailor-made, and is based on so-called 6 pillars of smartness. We can review together the key findings. Just to note that the region under the abbreviation represents the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Poland, Slovenia, Croatia, Bulgaria, Romania, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And they are, unless they are referred individually, this is the region you will see some information for. The key findings are that the cities in this particular region still perceive, this is their own view, perceive gaps in basic infrastructure. The main deficiencies are identified in transport, housing, but also in healthcare investments and financing. Cities from this region lag behind the EU average in productivity and in innovation. There are several demographic challenges. We will come back to that. And differences within these individual countries are also between capitals and other cities, such as second-tier cities and other. There are just few charts and maps I would like to present you with from the study. This is a demonstration of the demographic challenges, particularly population decline. This one is in total caused by natural change and migration. Sometimes the information there, for example, in Poland, looks like there's no change, but in fact, the net migration rate is a result of emigration and immigration. So the Poles are moving out, and some other nationalities like Ukrainians are moving to the country. The situation is worse because while there's one challenge at the country level that the population is declining, the problem is that the population is moving out, particularly from the second-tier cities, either to the metropolitan areas or they are moving to suburbs, and the cities are faced with the need to provide infrastructure, but it's a challenging, for example, for the investors like the EIB to justify the need when the population is shrinking. The EIB Smart Region Index is composed of 6 areas, pillars, as I said. It's smart economy, smart environment, smart governance, smart living, smart mobility, and smart society. Capitals of the countries in the Central Europe region are performing economically very well in terms of GDP per capita, in purchasing power parities. For example, I checked yesterday, cities like Prague, Bratislava, but also Warsaw are among top 20 NUTS 3 regions, for example, ahead of Vienna. So they are doing very well, but despite their economic performance, they still lag behind in terms of smartness indicators. And second-tier cities are significantly behind, particularly in societal indicators like living, quality of life, and in innovation. You can see in overall figures this region lag behind the EU mainly in smart governance and smart living. And when we reveal the separation between capital second-tier cities and other cities, the deficit is mainly on the side of the second-tier cities and other. But as you can see, the smart index for governance and living is relatively poor everywhere in the region. Cities have privileged position due to a number of factors. For example, well-educated population, which is concentrated in the cities in comparison to suburbs and rural areas. Productivity, in other words, production with a high value added is concentrated in capitals, less in other cities. Similarly, strong and growing companies are mostly concentrated in or around the capitals. To continue with the findings, regional disparities within the countries of the region are much wider in comparison to the other EU countries. And main obstacles for reversing the trends are budgetary limitations, the length of the approval process, political and regulatory instability, and a low technical capacity. Municipalities also have limited access to external financing, often given by the restrictions which were imposed by the central governments after the recent economic crisis, and they are still in place. Municipalities, and this was there I can continue and follow up on Eduard's proposal. Municipalities in the region are strongly dependent on the EU funds, and therefore it's crucial how funding will be organized at national level, and whether municipalities will have better access to both the grants and national co-financing, which is crucial for implementation of the projects. I'm checking where I am. This map shows how NUTS 3 region perform within the Smart Region Index at the EU level. The green are the top performers, and the red are the poor performers. You can see the north-south border. And if we recalibrate the index to the Central, Eastern, and Southeastern Europe region, you can see again green are top performers and the red are underperformers. And here are the same charts, but separated for individual pillars. Go through them, you can see how it is changing. Czech Republic not top performer anymore in some aspects, and also a pattern which can be seen that again capitals and metropolitan areas are scoring relatively high in comparison to the other parts of the countries. To conclude and to identify the main reasons why these regions are lagging behind, the municipalities in the regions perform poorly when it comes to the economic planning of infrastructure, mainly the strategic planning and investments. There are also issues in regional coordination of their investments. Municipalities are often in competition. So there's a room and need for improvement in terms of prioritization and coordination of projects in order to reach public funds available. And this is where smart city investment approach could help to improve efficiency and reduce the investment gaps. And this is what the EIB promotes. I have to go through quickly further. There's a cartoon from our website. You can see the link where the mayor is thinking how to implement the integrated planning, and his deputy is showing off that yes, he can manage his mobile, he can turn on his toaster. This is a joke, of course, but to some extent, at a certain local level, there's a gap between what the market, what the opportunities are, and what the, let's say, local management can handle, and how they can manage the development and the management of the city. For the EIB, what is crucial and how we understand smart city is that first we finance only sustainable projects, which is financially, economically, and environmentally. Plus, we require that they are prepared in an integrated manner. They are prepared inclusively, consulting citizens and all relevant stakeholders, and they are innovative. Of course, we understand that particularly in this region, not all projects can be smart. Let's say there are some ordinary basic infrastructure, and in order to stimulate, we would be happy to label smart city program and give it this label when at least 30% of the investments are smart, and we are going through the investment pipeline of the promoters, and we are earmarking them and assessing them accordingly. This chart shows some examples. I don't like very much exhaustive catalogs, because each city should find appropriate solutions to its needs and problems. In the past, this chart is 3 years old. At that time, there were obvious forerunners like energy, smart meters, etc. But I think nowadays, I'm not sure whether we are in post-COVID crisis, but I think this situation showed that not only big cities should aspire for smart city investments, but smaller places are not less important when it comes to basic services for citizens, such as healthcare and education, and that the quality matters everywhere, and the citizens have the right to get the best services, regardless whether they are located in the capitals or in rural areas. And the EIB has a number of instruments how to support smart city investments. Normally, we enter the deals with the stakeholders, including cities, directly, either through investment loan, which is one or a few investments, so we know them in advance, or it's a direct framework loan, which is an open envelope. We know the areas, we know the sectors which will be financed, or in case of, and this is a response to Georg, how to approach smaller cities, towns through intermediated framework loans. There we need to find a national interlocutor, intermediary, like we found in Belgium, Belfius, which was able to hand out really tiny, small loans to small towns, and the intermediary, the bank, either national promotional bank or commercial bank, needs to take on our strategy and the view of smart city investments. Our aspiration is also to launch investment platforms. There we need a national coordination at the national level, typically Ministry of Finance and the national promotional banks, where we could ideally blend the available EU grants, national grants, and lending, eventually equity. This is in progress in a couple of countries. And I've listed few examples of an investment loan in Rouen, in the city of Rouen, in the northern France, in Normandy. The project comprises remediation of a port and former industrial sites. The objective was to prepare the site for future development with a mixed purpose, residential, commercial, public space, leisure, cultural, etc. And the smart aspect was in an integrated approach to the entire quarter with a focus on sustainable mobility and energy efficiency. One of few examples from the region, from Poland. You know, I could say that in some countries, like in the Czech Republic or Poland, you can really use the term smart because it is a bit negative connotation, like too smart. So, for example, you can see that this operation is labeled intelligent. And in Krakow, we supported an entire investment program of intelligent and sustainable projects, which were dedicated mainly to intelligent transportation systems, energy efficiency, but also use of IT technology in various sectors. The backbone of the program, why we accepted as a smart, was the city's development strategy and their integrated planning approach. On this slide, I'm presenting our flagship project with a commercial bank in Belgium. Belfius had a significant market share on municipal lending, and this partner of ours had the capacity and competency to apply our selection criteria on our behalf. There's even a video on YouTube if you want to get an inspiration, where you can see a number of small, tiny projects from small towns and cities in various sectors. And the last example represents Ginkgo Fund, which was set up to purchase brownfield across Belgium and France, to remediate them and to prepare them for the development, and sometimes to proceed with the real estate projects as well. Here the aim is to prepare the sites for future activities which will have to follow, this is the requirement and condition, which will have to follow the principles of integrated urban development. And this is a contact, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kamil. That was most comprehensive. A very nice overview of both the investment survey in the region as well as the financial service offerings of the bank, and some very concrete examples, especially the Belfius case as well, that you can understand that the EIB is a very large organization, but is through that type of partnership is able to deliver locally on a much smaller scale than people might maybe intuitively expect. I think we now have time for some questions. I'll leave some time for the audience to post questions via the question facility. But while they're doing that, I want to invite everybody to turn on their video camera again so that we have the full panel available, if that's okay. So I can see Shirene coming back and Kamil coming back. Probably Eduard, and then if Georg from Georg Houben can come back as well, that would be great. Super nice. I can see Georg not yet on the video, but I can definitely see his initials on the screen. Georg, can you hear us? Not yet, I don't think. So I do have some. Oh, there is Georg again. So because I wanted to start off with you, Georg, because you were the first in line to present. So overlooking all of this, very interesting contributions from, let's say, a large-scale infrastructure investor, represented by Shirene, completely a rather different perspective from Eduard, who's looking at housing stock and energy efficiency, refurbishment. And then we have the sort of the sweeping perspective of Kamil across a very large region, and let's say the instruments that a large bank like the EIB has, and how those instruments could be applied locally as well. So in all of this spiel, if you like, well, what do you think the key actions of the marketplace should be or could be, especially to address the needs of small and medium-sized cities? And not necessarily, let's call them the usual suspects, the large metropolitan areas that do have smartness even within their own departments and probably know their way around as well. What is the niche, if you like, that the marketplace could fulfill in that respect?
Well, I think it's a multi-dimensional role the marketplace could play here. One of the key factors, I think, is still how do we make large portfolios of finance or large instruments, how do we make those accessible or fit also for smaller and medium-sized cities? So one issue which is always discussed broadly in all kinds of panels of this kind is, of course, aggregation of demand. So really bundling projects of kind of the same kind or same of the technology, bring them together in bigger consortia in order to aggregate the demand for a certain investment. So that could be one way to go. And I think that the marketplace, its matchmaking facility, and also our community can play a very crucial role here in bringing stakeholders together or in providing the necessary means for actually finding partners for that aggregation of demand thing. Another thing, and I'm quite grateful that Kamil has raised this, is we should maybe look into make examples like the Belfius approach also available in other member states, so that we really have a number of intermediaries who collaborate directly with bigger investors or even institutional banks to make things happen, to really provide, let's say, low threshold, low risk finance to smaller, medium-sized cities. So that's a bit the kind of takeaway, because otherwise the portfolio which was presented in this panel is very broad and also very promising. The only thing, and that is what you mentioned, Eelco, is really how do you make that fit or compatible with the needs and the actual, how do you say, weak position, if I may say so, of smaller, medium-sized cities. Because also from an infrastructure point of view, administration-wise, they might not yet be in a position to go about a smart city project. So there's a whole lot more behind it. And that's exactly where the marketplace, I think, can play a very crucial and helpful role in bringing these people or these cities, administrations, and so on the level to actually get into the planning, get into preparing for the actual investment or implementation.
Thank you, Georg. So I think that's a nice bridge to maybe a question for Shirene as well. So we have heard Kamil talking about, let's say, the leading cities in the region, let's say the Eastern European region. So he was talking about Bratislava, Warsaw, Prague, in some respect even doing better than fantastic cities like Vienna. But what do you expect from, let's say, as a second-tier type size cities across Europe? How could they best work with you as an investor? So you painted this picture of the special purpose vehicle and the role of the city as being, I'm not sure what exact words you were using. It was they don't need to be sort of extremely heavily involved in all the machinery of the investment vehicle. They just need to provide a certain set of conditions, if I understood correctly. So what would be your advice, maybe your dream, your hopes around the role of these small and medium-sized cities, which I think is the target for this session as well?
Yeah, so actually, as alluded to by Georg, we think that smaller cities working alongside each other and combining projects to achieve the desired level of scale would be probably the best way forward. But I guess touching more upon what Arcus is looking for as an investor, we actually think Tier 1 cities are probably already at a certain level of smartness and may not be the ideal candidate for the type of structure that we have in mind. So in fact, the idea of working together with an investor and a set of advisors and service providers would probably work best for Tier 2 cities or even smaller, who do need that structure to help them get from point A to B. So I actually think that what I've presented is probably better suited for smaller to medium-sized cities.
Thank you, Shirene. Yeah, and then Eduard, because you were focusing on energy efficiency, refurbishment, the city's role is providing. Let me look at the world as let's say, a de-risking mechanism in terms of a social, parachute, if you like, for default payments. So could you expand a little bit on? Would you expect a renovation wave across Europe if the cities would play that role? Would it, because energy efficiency is clearly one of the best investments from, let's say, from an energy perspective, and there's lots of existing housing stock. So the problem is clear, but why is it not happening yet? So a massive investment in energy efficiency would be great, if you like. If I just look around here in the attic I'm sitting at, I'm almost ashamed. I should have done everything already here, even in this little area here. So could you expand a little bit on what you expect from cities to drive that energy efficiency investment? Because from an engineering perspective, is one of the best things you could do, obviously, for housing stock.
It may sound perhaps a little bit too standard, but I'll say that I love that question. I love that question because I was about to jump in later or sooner about what's missing in the equation. Because I know what I'm going to say may sound counterintuitive from the financing side, but that's what the experience has been showing us repeatedly, which is financing is not the solution. We know. We have learned the lesson. Financing is part of the solution. Financing needs to be there for those who, in the end, need the financing to complete the project. But that only comes at the very end of the journey. Before someone, a homeowner, an asset owner, an infrastructure developer wants to really take on this cumbersome journey, there are many questions that need to be addressed from a technical point of view, operational point of view, legal point of view. So all these pain points need to be solved. So you were asking me, why is this not happening? So this is not happening because we ourselves have been focusing for too long, too much on financing. And actually, we've learned recently that people, human beings, take decisions from an emotional point of view. And only then we bring all the rational, all the power of our cortex to justify those investment decisions. So, and those investment decisions are then explained through energy efficiency and other, let me say, rational elements. But when you take a homeowner or asset owner trying to make a decision, you need to tackle first all these emotional, so to speak, elements, and that's what I was meaning by adding value. And by adding value, I mean really tackling all the pain points before the question on financing comes up. Otherwise, the demand will not be triggered. So back to your question, what needs to be done from the cities to stimulate that demand is to set up the legal framework and eventually, only eventually, set up some public funding, subsidies, even if they are limited, or de-risking mechanisms to support those programs. But there needs to be a market player, be it public, be it private. I would encourage at the beginning being private, that can really solve through the one-stop shop concept, through a program, all these different pain points that the homeowner asset owner needs to go through, and only then bring in also the financing solution, because only then we'll be able to stimulate demand, have all these many small projects being aggregated, as Georg was mentioning, being pooled. And actually what we do best is refinancing them through securitization and any other existing elements to go through. So we need to focus on demand. And cities can have an actual role because they know their citizens, they know their local needs, and they can bring in private players to really provide some service, some technical assistance, and also some funding for those projects. I'll pause here.
Thank you, Eduard. That was very, very, very interesting. Now to Kamil. So okay, an institutional bank, EIB, a set of instruments that you painted a picture of in one slide, and just zooming in on the Belvius experience, if you like. So what could be done, or maybe what should be done to replicate that experience across all the member states, or maybe even in the same member state, so to have that mechanism of funneling money into those smaller, medium-sized enterprises. Because probably the bank is too big to be dealing with all of those local actors themselves. So you need to have your infrastructure, your middleman, or your channels, if you like. And Belfius apparently was one of the channels, or is one of the channels. So what could be done, maybe not by you, but the whole by Europe to make that work? So accessibility of the funds to smaller cities. That's probably what I'm asking.
Thank you for this question. Look, we understand, we see each other. We are not the only player, although we give out a big bulk, and mostly, unlike the EU grants, which are always labeled with a nice label on the buildings, this was supported by the EU funds. Mostly the final recipients of our intermediated loans do not know about it. Most of the commercial banks at national level are financed from us. We have a special vehicle for that. It used to be global loan, now it's multi-beneficiary investment loan. So most of the banks are financed through that, and we provide through an intermediary those microfinancing and SMEs. And if I said that we finance 1/3 to urban projects, another 20, less than 30% of our lending goes to SMEs. This is our priority. And also for the commercial banks, they have two chunks, SMEs and municipalities. So similarly, small loans are often our funding. But I would agree with what Eduard said. Money is not an issue. I'm not a macroeconomist. I'm not into monetary, but with the expensive policy in EU, the banks and national banks are sitting on big pot of money. It's just there. So I think it's about the demand, and I'm happy. And I didn't participate in the study and the analysis, but I think it's true that there's a lack of coordination and cooperation and prioritization and project preparation at national, respectively at local level. If you speak to individual counterparts, meaning municipalities, if they have a priority and they pursue that priority, I have never heard of anyone who would not be able to find financing for that. The problem I see, and it's not a mistake of the EU, it's how the sometimes EU programs are managed at national level, is that local governments are forced into competition with each other. I remember a story when I was used to be a consultant. I learned that in Ireland, the pot of money for water infrastructure, for let's say sewage treatment plants, they had like for 12 projects. So at national level, they prepared 13 projects just in case one falls off. In the Czech Republic, they prepare 100 of projects, and they compete each other. So, and they will still finance only those 12, and those 88 applications, consultancy and efforts are put into a drawer, and next program period they have to run the feasibility studies again. And with regards to SMART, I made a hint. It's my personal, not on my institutional, with my institutional head, but it's my personal experience. Unfortunately, with the smart investment programs and projects, you don't win local elections. Unfortunately, the local councils are with representatives which have very local partial interests. And if I am very blunt, often, and I've witnessed that, you may have an enlightened mayor with the smart programs. We come to an agreement. It's perfect. It will be a flagship project. The person would be sitting here and presenting instead of me. But the local representatives, they prefer pavements to something which brings the city to the next decade. So I think we have the study revealed, maybe in some buzzwords like coordination, project preparation, design, revealed the weaknesses. I don't think that the financing is an issue. It would adjust. Of course, some of the vehicles like Belfius unit, it's a bit of unique. I can tell you that it's not easy to find interlocutor at national level for the region we are speaking about. Also for the reason that the money is not an issue, in a way they don't need our funding, and the blending mechanisms are always complicated. To mix EU grants with national grants and EU funds, you bring technicians and lawyers together, and they will spend the whole time finding the problems instead of solutions. Am I too blunt?
Frank. So Georg, so any responses to those reflections? You have to unmute yourself, Georg.
Yeah, speaking about technology, here we go. I actually wanted to react to everything what was said. What was triggering my intervention now again is actually this narrative about non-technical or non-financial issues which come before the actual financing. There was this issue of, if I may say so, citizen engagement or city society engagement. So first get out of the way the question about non-technological or non-financial incentives. So what does it bring to the individual? How does it make their lives better if you invest in a certain technology or project? That's a very crucial question. And it is no surprise that one of the action clusters in our innovation partnership is on citizen engagement, because that's extremely important. Then the next point was on that smart doesn't get you or doesn't make you win the next election. That's also very sensible and very interesting point, because I think what we observed is that, if I may humbly say so, that where smart is successful is actually where this incentive was clarified with the whole city or municipal society, where people have really a buy-in into that strategy. And then sustainability would also apply to politics. That is, a politician who fully buys in or fully supports the sustainable view rather than his sort of personal political or party's view would actually win the next election, because he's looking beyond the 4 years, 5 years, whatever election period, because that's what counts in the end, that you make for a sustainable approach, which is long-term, which is self-sufficient, which gets the buy-in of citizens, or if I may say so, the whole city society, which would include, of course, also SMEs and startups and local enterprises and so on. So pretty much everyone. So I just wanted to emphasize or resonate with that, because that's a very important issue and also plays into, in fact, the risk assessment when it comes to financing. Because that is a fair question. Will your city societies support the projects you intend to invest in? That's a good question, in fact, and it should also be part of the, let's say, broader risk assessment, I think. But maybe there is a different opinion on that.
Thank you, Georg. So also in the interest of time, so we have 5 minutes left. So I want to invite all our panelists for maybe some let's say closing message to the audience. So given what we heard today in this panel, what would be your parting message, if you like, to the audience from an investor perspective? What is it that you want to maybe advise the audience? Maybe that should be the question. Shirene, can I give you the floor as the first person?
Sure, thank you. I guess the parting message that I'd like to reiterate to the audience, and this is primarily for the municipalities, is again to use your buying power as a catalyst for the positive changes that you would like to see in your city, and whether that be for an upcoming election or beyond that, your vision needs to be well communicated. The technology is there, but it needs to be adapted to meet your needs, which requires you to have a defined set of goals and objectives. You need to be realistic about the underlying business case that's supporting your smart city project, which means that the risk-return relationship needs to be fair. No one understands the needs of your city better than you, so you need to leverage that information to figure out what is most important and how much that's worth to your city.
Thanks, Shirene. That's crystal clear. Eduard.
So very much in line with what we were discussing in the last few minutes, I would urge cities to identify local partners with whom they can partner up and come up with a proposal to get funding from the recovery funds. My understanding is that from January, these funds should be in place for local governments and national governments to go out there, submit their proposals. And these proposals, again, and that's, I think, my main message, need to be focused on triggering the local economy, triggering job creation, and boost energy transition. So really is the opportunity to get all these elements together and take advantage of this available funding, in some cases, good subsidies, but also very affordable financing to bring their cities to and take the opportunity to transition to a more sustainable economic model. Yeah, I will leave it there.
Thank you, Eduard. Kamil.
Well, I think that as usual, the latest crisis brings a unique opportunity. You remember my chart about these examples, project examples, energy, smart meters, etc. But there were some areas which were rather rare and exceptions, and it's not ordinary. And I think that this crisis brought a wake-up call. From one day to another, we were stuck at home, locked down, and suddenly these discussions on electronization of public authorities or public services or distance learning is out of discussion. It became standard from one day to another, and I hope that suddenly the smart and innovative ways of management of the city will become more standard than it is a group of weirdos in the corner of public administration. And I hope when we discuss, when we mention the political cycle, that the citizens will reflect it. And I'm happy that what Georg said, I should not present only the problem, but also the solution, is really on presenting. And the role of the politicians is to present and communicate and get agreement on their visions, instead of have a majority voting, but get the stakeholders. And this is the requirement what I mentioned as inclusive, that the stakeholders, not only citizens, but and I can see it mostly in the Western EU, and we are still learning in the Central Eastern Europe, to speak to public, get them on board, public society and various stakeholders, and we cannot avoid it. And now we have the technology, we have the means, and we should use it. And I think this is the challenge, but also opportunity for the cities, how to implement their smart cities in the future. For this particular region is the only way how to convert one, Americans would say, how to convert €1 of investments into $30 of economic benefit.
Thank you, Kamil. So the last 15 seconds, Georg. If you do 12, I do the last 3.
Oh, well, that's very nice. Well, okay, I agree to anything which was said. Very well resonating with the messages we heard today. Maybe one last message. If you have a question where to start, if you are totally overwhelmed with all the options presented, get in touch with Eelco and his teammates from the matchmaking team. They will get you in the right direction. And thank you for listening in, and much success with your projects. Thank you.
Now, my final few seconds. Thank you all panelists, very interesting contributions. We made the technology work for us. That was great. the only parting message I have is, as a matchmaker, with my fellow matchmaker, we're absolutely looking forward to your project concept notes. And if you have any questions, any doubts of raising your project maturity level to a level that this lady and these two gentlemen find interesting, do get in touch with us. That is my parting message. Thank you very much, and goodbye.